Okay, so we got a basic texture set up. We put our maps on our object. We got our bump map, our normal map made to a bump map channel going into the bump channel. Made that in Photoshop. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and build the top piece of our box. We're going to stick to this guy right here. We're going to model this white little piece. And like I said, we're just going to focus on this little corner right now because we're going to use symmetry to take care of a lot of the work for us. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and get my box set up. Since this is just a modeling exercise, there is no unit measure or worry or concern about how big I want to make it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it anyway. Unit setup. We're probably going to have to do this every time you open up a brand new session in Max and start a new scene because it'll reset to default. So go to metric, unit setup, and set this to centimeters, which is fine. That means basically we're in the metric system, and we've got units, our measurements in our scene are going to be in centimeters. So I go to box. I'm going to go ahead and go keyboard entry just to keep it simple. X, Y, Z coordinates. We're starting in this, at the origin. That's what we want. Let's go ahead and say 25, 25, 25 meters. Boom. Big box. We like big box. Okay, I'm going to get a little smaller though. Make it 10. Create a new box. It's about half the size, so that's a little better. Alright, so this is going to be a large crate for the most part for a game engine, so but it'll give us a chance to actually focus on some bigger details. The actual units and measurements and distance between the vertices does make a difference when you're modeling and moving in your scene. The great thing about 3ds Max, Maya, and any other modeling tool is that once you make it an editable poly or an editable mesh, you can do anything you want with it. We can scale it down in game engine, scale it down in a movie set, whatever. Just let's get it to that edit poly stage first. So right now it's a WIP, a work in progress, so we don't have to worry about it too much. With it being a parametric, we can still get to our segments. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get it into some basic symmetrical pieces. We're focusing on basically 1/4 of it and only half of that, and only about 1/4 of that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and set this guy up here. Not you. You're 2. And you'll be 3. And this will work because now that gives me the reason why I like keeping the parametrics is because when I add segments, it's going to be consistent width or distance between each one. It's going to be very accurate. So I don't have to do the math myself. The machine does it. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a edit poly. So if I right click in the modify list, show buttons, I get a set of buttons right here. Here's where the button sets are. So I click on mesh editing, put an edit poly modifier on here. Since we're only working on this piece, I'm going to go ahead and detach a copy. Make it a clone, and we're going to go ahead and name it crate top 01. Crate, not carrot. I like carrot. That's like the 3rd time today. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Now I have this one little piece. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to call it modeling. It's just basically like my Lego bucket. It's just generic. Now let's go ahead and discuss real quick why I did what I just did. First and foremost, I created the basic shape for my crate. This is the size of my box. This is what's going into the game engine. It's going to be in this bounding box. With that creation, it put the pivot dead center on the bottom of my box. Since this is an object that can go anywhere in the world, it just needs to know where the bottom of it is so it can snap to the world geometry of your level. But it's in the center, which means that this guy is going to align, the pivot's going to align exactly in the middle of the object. When it comes to the symmetry, it's going to make a nice, clean, symmetrical object. And the pivot's going to align to this object just fine. So I'm going to hide the base layer where my original object is. I'm going to go ahead and freeze it. This is the actual active modeling layer. We're going to go ahead and save as. Got a folder for it. We're going to call it low crate. Go once, first scene, hit save. Okay. Making this base piece, what I'm going to go ahead and do is get the UV set up. So I right click, get the UV button sets, put the UVs in here, open it up. I can see where my UVs are. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's all selected. Flatten map. Change this to 85. Hit OK. Alright, so it's organized in this area. This is the top lid, and it's only a quarter of it. So I'm just going to slide him up right here, get him out of the way. Right click, collapse 2. It's baked in there. It doesn't change until I change it myself. Alright, what we need to do now is discern what shape we're making. We're basically making from here to here around this little piece in this area. So let's go ahead and get set up for that. Since I'm only focusing on just one side, I'm going to select these edges. And I'm going to use the connect tool. Always use the options. You want to have that caddy because it's very useful. Let's go ahead and set it up to 2, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. These options right here give you a way to separate the distance of your object, of the edges you're creating, or where they slide down on the face of the geometry. I'll hit OK. I can move this piece up, and now we're starting to see the shape that we want. Slide it down a little bit, and we're not worried about this guy because all we have to do here is go back to mesh editing, do our symmetry. Now this really throws people off, and I want you to be aware that these are modifiers. I'm going to hide my buttons and get into the actual modifier aspect of it. Every modifier, every object, everything in Max has a sub-object. You may not access it all the time, but you just know that it's there. For the symmetry, it's the mirror. This, in technical terms, is a gizmo. So don't mess that up. If I rotate this, oh, there's my object. Okay, so I'm going to right-click while, if I'm holding left-click and moving, and then right-click, it's just going to reset the transform I was doing. So it goes back to its original state. Hit A, get my angle snap. Go ahead and so we're going to go ahead and put it right in the corner. Then I'm going to flip it. Now, I don't need to get rid of it right now. If I go to Edit Poly and click on the little test tube, it's going to show both results. So whenever I do any kind of changes, it's going to reflect it on both sides. Now, what it's showing here, this is the cage. This is the original geometry hidden there that you can affect in your modeling. But notice what is happening with the symmetry. Alright? So just be wary of that. So here I can continue to make changes as I need to. If I hold Shift, I create geometry. So now I have that little bit of a lip. Should have done this sooner, but I'll go ahead and do it now. I'm going to get my chamfer going. I'm going to go ahead and hide this because I want to get the chamfer on this edge. This is where I want it. So real quick, one quick way to get that selection. If I select on the vertex, hold Control, and click on my edge, you'll get this conversion. I'm just going to go ahead and add to my selection. Now here, we're going to quickly do a chamfer. Now what's important to remember here on the chamfer, and I can actually show you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and close that and show you what I want you to keep in mind when you're chamfering. There's a cool trick here called the NURMS subdivisions, just like Turbo Smooth. Now I have these edges selected. You can see the cage. If I go ahead and chamfer, this is how we're going to use Turbo Smooth effectively. When we want to get a nice round edge that's nice and smooth, we want to have the chamfer further apart from each other. The closer they get in to each other, the sharper that Turbo Smooth or that NURMS is going to make that corner. Alright? What it's doing is subdividing all that geometry, alright, exponentially. So the closer it is, the less of it to get distorted and manipulated and tweaked. So it becomes a little bit cleaner as it can get real difficult to be try that again. It can get real messy if your poly count is real high and your welds are not there. But the idea is this is how you're going to control your sharp edges when you're jacking up your poly and trying to get a nice realistic beveled edge. I'll go ahead and turn that off because we're doing a solid surface. It's nice and jacked and crisp. Alright, so here I hit OK. Go ahead and hit the symmetry. So we got this piece. It's looking pretty good. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and save as. I'm going to hit the plus button, make a version of it. And I can go here and I'm going to collapse it as a poly. Alright, the reason why I can do that without fear because I've already saved it as a version. All right. Check it on my, we're going to go ahead and, this piece right here is going to be a different object, so all I'm going to worry about is this little lip right here. So what we'll do is we have to go over how we can create that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the actual edge right here. I'll do one cut and then I'll show you the other side with slice plane. So I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm going to go and use cut. I'm going to just pick, I'm going to do this with my eyeball, so it's not going to be all that accurate, but I can do certain tricks to make it look a little nicer. Alright, so if I go into my side mode that would have that image, you can see right here, wrong button, there we go, it's not straight, right? What we can do here is we'll make planar. Now here's where I get I get kind of confused sometimes, because Max has a way of changing which way it's orienting its axis. If you see this, Z is up, coming here, now Y is up. This is 2D view. So try to do it in the 3D perspective view. You want to align it to the angle that it's like the normals would be facing, basically what's perpendicular to it. We want it to line to the X. So there, it straightens it up on its own line. Alright, and then from this point I can just slide it down wherever I need to make it work, but it's going to start screwing this mesh up right here if we're not careful. I'm going to leave it alone for right now because I want to show you another useful tool. This is the slice plane. Go ahead and select that guy. It slices on the objects you have selected. So I'll go ahead and, not quick slice, I'll go to slice plane. Slice plane gives you this little gizmo here. You can rotate it. And you move it, and you can see where your cut's actually going to be. So this is a lot more accurate. Okay. Put that right there on that point. I'll go ahead and say slice, deactivate the function, and now I got my piece here. We don't need these guys. I don't want to get rid of it because it's got all this different geometry, and I need to be wary of how it may create it later. So what I'm going to do real quick is just show you how I would kind of just test things out. I'm going to use the inset. Alright, see, that's what I'm talking about. I don't have clean geometry. So let's go ahead and talk about what's happening here. I think you guys can see pretty clearly what's going on. Alright, so this is something we got to be wary of with cuts and slices. What I can do here is I got these vertices selected. I would think, you know, from a distance, you do that, you got one vertex. If you look right here, I have 3. I zoom in here, there's 3. Makes a triangle. Ooh, icky. Collapse. Alright, let's go back into that inset. Okay, that's a lot cleaner. Agreed? So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Go ahead and hit this. Get rid of these edges. Now I'm going to show you a quick little snapping. Oopsie. I'm going to show you a quick little snapping trick. All right. Oh, I don't want to pause you. All right, never mind. All right, so what I want to do is I want to move this guy up to where he aligns with this. If I use the make planar, it's going to snap them together to the median distance of the two, and I need this edge to stay where it's at. I need this edge to meet it. So I'm going to right click onto the snap tools. Boom. And what we want to look at are the options. First off, it's on vertex, so you can see where it snaps to the vertices. But if I grab here, it's kind of messy. So I want to go here, and I want to enable access constraints in the options. Alright? That means that if I'm moving in Y, I can move my mouse over here, and it'll snap to the vertex. So it's only moving to Y, but it's snapping to the vertex that I want. Click on that, and it has now moved that edge to where I want it. To show you again, go here. We need to activate the axis. So we click on the X, click drag, and I just go to that snap. Boom. Alright. So I turn on snap. I can get rid of these guys. Now I have just a nice start for my bevel edge. Drop that down, and there's my piece. The cleanup here, get rid of the triangles. the trick is to find out where you need to clean it up. So before I start removing pieces, we can do the cut. If I use snap, I'll get real crisp cuts. It's going to have triangles right now, but I'll go in there and I'll find the quads and actually create them as I need to. This guy, there's two things you can do. If you hit remove, it'll get rid of it for you. And we'll do that real quick. I'm going to show you something. If I use that remove tool on the edges right here, I just go ahead and click on remove. The vertices are still there. If I go to the edge mode, hold control, and even in the right click on remove, the vertices are still there. It worked yesterday. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit control remove, and that should get it. And never mind. Control backspace will work, but control remove also works. Alright, so there's something else here. Alright, so what I'm gonna do, this guy's being stubborn. See if I can get him here. Alright, there's a workaround. They did target weld to get him to snap. Sometimes that works, sometimes you can find that Max has its quirks. Go to edge. I just need to remove that edge. And so now, you know, the triangle we have there, we kind of need, we can add more polish if we need to. We could probably clean that up. But here's our basic object. I know our UVs aren't perfect yet, but they're at least in a position where I left them. So they're not quite clean. If I flatten this, it's going to make a different kind of situation. So let's go ahead and talk about real quick. I use the symmetry tool to kind of see how the whole model will come up across, and I did that quick cleanup. I'm about to lose that work real quick, but I'm going to show you how you can use symmetry to set yourself up. Actually, I guess right, I changed the rules. You're not allowed to do that anymore. You want everything flattened. So let's go ahead and keep that. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and get that flatten mapping. So at this point, collapse 2. Since our pivot is right there on the box from the original box, let's put the symmetry, hit flip, symmetry. Actually, you can just click on this, I think. Y, flip. There you go. There's the start of your box model, all right? Now, all these polygons up here are not necessary, but they're justified down here. So that your job is to actually, you could cut these poly counts down so you can have more quality, high quality, higher res pieces and get that shape in there. If that becomes something that the game needs as an important distinction. So we got this guy. I apply him. He's on here. Hit render. And now we can see our shape has this powder coat material on it. All right. When we actually will do render to texture, first thing we'll do is make sure we're going to the folder that we want it to. Did it pause? Did it pause?